Wait, the electric bill is $2,000? I couldn't help but scream in shock. I had just checked the email confirming this month's electric bill, and it stated $2,000. I thought it was a hallucination and checked multiple times, but it clearly stated $2,000. I've never heard of an electric bill being $2,000 for just 1 month. Last year for the same month, it was only $400. While I felt $400 was a bit high, I thought it was understandable during the cold season since we often used heaters. But $2,000 is definitely off. I had no idea why the electric bill had skyrocketed. We haven't changed our usage of electricity from last year. Plus, after calmly assessing the situation, it still seemed impossible for $400 to jump to $2,000. Something's definitely wrong. I'll check and find out what caused this. I resolved to do this and decided to discuss it with my husband when he got back from work. He was also quite surprised, and after discussing it, we decided to turn off the breaker for now. We settled on doing it this weekend. My husband suggested we take this opportunity to spend a night at a hotel so we could have some quality time together for the first time in a while. But to the following week, as planned, we turned off the breaker and headed to the hotel for some uninterrupted time together. As early the next morning, after leaving the inn to return home, our house door was banged on repeatedly. The knocking was so aggressive that we looked at each other in shock. And with a bad feeling, I muttered, "Who could it be?" "It's not them, is it?" My name is Yvonne. I'm 27 years old. I work from home as a writer. I have a husband of the same age named Tom, and we don't have any children yet. Tom was my high school mate, and we were both in the tennis club. We're quite close back then, but had lost touch after graduating from high school with no contact at all. However, we reconnected at a high school reunion 2 years ago, which led to us going out for meals together. We reminisced about old times, of course, but we also talked a lot about our current jobs. Tom works as a banker and seems to be living a busy yet fulfilling life. Soon after, Tom confessed his feelings for me, and that's how our relationship began. Things went smoothly, and we eventually got married. Then it was time to visit each other's parents, starting with my in-laws. It was about a 2-hour drive away. But before leaving the house that day, I checked my appearance in the mirror several times and made sure not to forget a hostess gift. The gift was a box of well-known and delicious sweets. However, since my in-laws run a restaurant, I was a bit worried whether the sophisticated palate of my parents-in-law would appreciate it. I was grateful for Tom's attempt to ease my nerves with his bright smile, but my heartbeat remained fast. Upon arriving at the in-laws, my mother-in-law greeted us with a smile. And "It's so good to have you here. Come in." Her warm welcome made me feel a bit more relaxed. After bowing deeply and exchanging greetings, we were invited inside. Handing over the sweets, my mother-in-law's face lit up with joy. "We both love this brand of sweets." "Yvonne, you're so thoughtful. I'm glad you liked it." It was a relief that the gift was well received. My father-in-law also greeted us warmly, making me feel relieved that they seemed like kind people. However, that feeling was short-lived. As we sat around the table, My mother-in-law's demeanor quickly changed. So, Ivane, what do you do for work? As you know, Tom is a banker. It's important that his wife has a suitable career too, right? How much do you make? And tell me about your parents. What do they do for work? Faced with rapid-fire questions, I was a bit taken aback. Then Tom quickly came to my defense against his mother. What's with the sudden interrogation? That's no way to ask. It's rude to Yvonne. Oh, it's important, isn't it? I just want to know what kind of person Tom's spouse is. I'm not asking out of malice.
So, what do you do for a living?
Yes, we're curious.
We want to know more about our son's partner.
Mom, Dad, stop it.
It's important for us to know.
She's right, son.
How come I ask you? I can't believe my mom and dad asked you such disrespectful questions.
No, it's okay. Sure, I was surprised at first. But when you think about it, it's natural for them to be curious about who their only son is marrying. Besides, it seems like they've accepted me, so there's no problem. So I wasn't too bothered by it. But of more than anything, I was relieved that the visit to Tom's parents had gone smoothly. Later, when we visited my parents, they were quite taken with Tom. I'm so happy Vana is marrying such a wonderful person. My mother said with tears in her eyes, blessing our union. Thus, having greeted each other's parents, we officially married. We rented an apartment and started our married life, which, like Tom, was peaceful and smooth sailing. Perhaps about a year later, Tom received a transfer order. The new location was just a 15-minute walk from his parents' house. Upon hearing this, his mother suggested we move into the second floor of an apartment they owned, which we accepted. The first floor housed the restaurant run by his parents, as well as their living quarters.
Yvonne, are you really okay with this?
It's not exactly living together, but having my parents right downstairs, especially since we're still newlyweds.
If you're not okay with it, we can say no.
Thanks for worrying, but I'm fine.
Thanks for worrying, but I'm fine.
I would have been worried if we were proposed to live completely together, but since we were just living on different floors, I didn't hesitate and quickly agreed. But to avoid any disputes over utility bills with the in-laws, Tom had the gas, electricity, and water systems renovated so that bills would come separately for each household. After moving in, our new life began. As someone who works from home, I was mostly cooped up in the house working. Soon after, my mother-in-law started asking me to run errands for ingredients used in their restaurant. She would come over without any warning and knock on our door. When he opened the door, she would tell me as if it were the most natural thing. Yvonne, I need you to run to the store. I wrote down what I need on this list, so go get it now. Get sure, don't mess it up. Ow, I answered, puzzled only for her to shout back as if cutting me off. Thus do your work after you're done with the errands. Come on, hurry up. Her father-in-law and I are busy. Okay, I reluctantly went on the errand. This became a frequent occurrence, eventually interfering with my work. I'm really sorry, but it's difficult for me when you ask so often. And it's... Oh, Yvonne, don't be mean. Oops, think of it as helping out us. Now off you go to the store today, too. No matter how much I protested, she wouldn't listen. So I started working outside at cafes to avoid being ambushed by her. 6 working outside, where I didn't have to worry about unexpected visits, was much more productive. I thought living separately would prevent any issues, but I was mistaken. It looks like I might have to continue working outside. I considered talking to Tom about it, but he had just transferred and was working hard at a new branch. I didn't want to add to his worries, so I tried to handle my mother-in-law on my own. It's a month and a half after moving in. I had urgent work to do and decided to stay home to work, planning to firmly decline any errands if asked. Then I received an email notification. Opening it, I found it was a notice about our electricity bill. For the first month after moving, I wondered how much the electric bill was. Maybe I'll check it before I start working. Muttering this, I opened the email to check, and the amount written there made me question. The electric bill has gone up from before. It had increased by a few $100s compared to when we lived in our previous apartment. I was alone in the room. Staring at my smartphone, I was puzzled when there was a knock at the front door. It was my mother-in-law. Oh, Yvonne's home today. That's good. You know, you've hardly been at home lately, and I've been having such a hard time with you always out. Just today, I ran out of onions and need you to go buy some right now. That's okay, right? Sorry, but I can't go today. I have urgent work to do. When I firmly declined, my mother-in-law started to make a fuss. What urgent work? You're just holding your smartphone? Were you playing games or something? Just go buy the onions quickly. A daughter-in-law should listen to her mother-in-law. I'm not playing games on my smartphone. I was looking at the electric bill. Just as I was saying this, I decided to ask her a question. I wanted to ask you something about the electric bill. It's higher than when we lived in our previous apartment. Have you noticed the electric bill going up? My question made her change her demeanor completely, furrowing her brows in concern. Yes, that's right. Our electric bill has gone up too, and it's such a hassle. It's really annoying, isn't it? I wish it could be cheaper. It costs so much just to live. It's a tough world, so sad and frustrating that it makes me want to cry. My mother-in-law dramatically pretended to cry. It seemed the electric bill at the in-laws was also on the rise, and they were having trouble with it. I see. So it's not just our household. Electric bills are going up everywhere. Prices are going up everywhere. Exactly. It's not just your and Tom's place. Everyone's dealing with it. Everyone's having a hard time. My mother-in-law stated emphatically, "Well, I'll just have to buy the onions myself today. But just so you know, this is just for today. I'll let it slide just this once," she said and left. After that, while still somewhat concerned about the electric bill, I realized I had to get down to work. 2.5 months had passed since we moved into the in-laws' apartment, and it was the middle of winter. But as usual, to avoid being asked to run errands by my mother-in-law, I had been working at a cafe. Just as I was about to leave after finishing my work, I remembered I hadn't checked my smartphone at all. Deciding to check it there, I sat back down and opened my phone. There was one email. I had been so focused on my work that I hadn't noticed the vibration notifications for emails. The email was titled Electric Bill Final Notice. is it was the second electric bill since we moved into the in-laws' apartment. As I opened the email, remembering last month's bill was a few $100s higher than it used to be at our previous apartment. I involuntarily exclaimed upon seeing the figure written there. What, $2,000? My outcry made the other customers in the cafe look over in wonder. I quickly apologized to those around me with a sorry. Entering at the cafe was sparsely populated, with about 5 people including me, which was somewhat of a relief. After apologizing, I stared intently at the email screen and checked the amount again. It was indeed $2,000. No matter how many times I looked, it stated an electric bill of $2,000. I've never heard of an electric bill being $2,000 for 1 month. Just confused, I went home to sort out the situation. When we lived in our previous apartment, the bill around this time of year averaged $400. It felt a bit high due to using heaters during the cold winter months, but I thought it was unavoidable. Yet, this year, it has jumped to $2,000. It's impossible for a $400 electric bill to become $2,000. Something's definitely wrong. I need to check and find out what caused this. Determined, I decided to discuss it with Tom when he got back from work. Tom was also greatly surprised, and after discussing, we decided to turn off the breaker as an initial step. But when should we turn off the breaker? As I said this, Tom made a pleasant suggestion. We haven't had a chance to spend much time together recently, so how about we go for a one-night trip this weekend? We can turn off the house's breaker then. I happily agreed to Tom's suggestion. We agreed to Tom's proposal and immediately looked for and booked a hotel for the weekend, as planned. We turned off our house's breaker early in the morning before setting off on our short trip. After enjoying some sightseeing, we arrived at the hotel and spent a relaxing time by ourselves. Whispering that's right, he headed to the balcony and checked the outdoor outlet. Together, we examined it, but the scene that unfolded before us was surprising yet somehow expected. A commercial-grade extension cord was running from the restaurant my in-laws run on the first floor to our home's outdoor outlet. In other words, my in-laws had been using our electricity without permission. That's the cause of the skyrocketing electric bill was indeed my in-laws. My husband and I immediately confronted our in-laws. You've been stealing our electricity, haven't you? The high electric bill was your fault. I usually don't raise my voice like this, but I couldn't help but shout in anger. This month's bill was $2,000. Last year it was only $400, so our bill shouldn't have been much different from last year if it was just us. You've stolen $1,600 worth of electricity. What were you thinking? The in-laws were silent for a while, looking down. But then, my mother-in-law suddenly looked up. She showed no signs of remorse and had a defiant look on her face. What's with you two getting so mad? Because of you, we had a terrible time. And all our appliances were unusable yesterday, and our food spoiled so we couldn't open the restaurant. Do you have any idea how much we lost? Turning off the breaker was such a mean thing to do. It's your responsibility, so you need to pay for our losses. My husband and I were dumbfounded by her ridiculous claim. Then my father-in-law joined in, berating us. That's right. We caused trouble for our customers and had a hellish day. It's all your fault. And stop fussing over the electric bill. Think of it as filial piety. As I listened to my in-laws, a suspicion arose in me. Excuse me, both of you. Did you have us move into this apartment from the beginning with the intention of stealing electricity? Were you planning to use this?
Guess that's right. You're gone. Not just that, we thought if we had you live here, you'd take care of us in our old age, too. It was all beneficial for us. We're getting old, we have to think seriously about our future. We don't want to end up in a facility, so we thought we'd have you look after us forever.
Well, how selfish could they be?
Look, we're not gonna be here forever, right? So, I'm gonna be transferred again at some point.
Indeed, Tom being a banker, transfers were inevitable every 3 to 5 years. So my understanding was that we would live here temporarily, not indefinitely. That we would live in this apartment for at most 5 years. Hearing Tom's words, the in-laws were surprised and then started yelling again. What? Is that true? We thought you'd be staying in this house forever. If you're going to be transferred that often, you should just quit being a banker. Find a job without transfers and keep taking care of us. What? This is just ridiculous. I can't believe you two. I used to respect you, despite your quirks, for running the restaurant so hard. I thought you were parents to be proud of. But now that feeling is gone. I can't respect you at all now, and honestly, I despise you. It's embarrassing to think you're my parents. As Tom said this, my father-in-law slammed his hand on the table and yelled, "How dare you talk to your parents like that? Who do you think raised you? If you're going to say such things, give back all the money we spent on your education. Do you know how much your education cost? Pay it back now."
Yes, Tom.
How could you say such terrible things? Your mother is heartbroken. But to think my only son would grow up to say such hurtful things. Oh, how sad. My mother-in-law started demanding education fees back, and my father-in-law began to dramatically pretend to cry. Not a single tear spilled from my mother-in-law's eyes. Amid this chaotic situation, I felt dizzy and coldly told my in-laws, "Nonsense. For starters, you will be paying us back for the electricity you stole. How dare you speak so insolently? Just know your place as a daughter-in-law and watch your mouth." My mother-in-law, who had been feigning tears, suddenly changed her expression and shouted at me, spitting as she yelled, "I've always disliked your defiant attitude." A daughter-in-law is supposed to obey her mother-in-law. Yet you never listen. It's unthinkable for a daughter-in-law to defy her mother-in-law. A pampered daughter-in-law like you won't understand until she's been hit. My mother-in-law shouted and tried to hit me, but Tom quickly intervened. "Mom, stop it. Calm down. Yvonne isn't wrong here. The fault lies with you and Dad. Please realize that. But just go home for today." Tom said this and expelled our still complaining in-laws. "Yvonne, are you okay?" "Yes, I'm fine," because Tom stopped it. "But what about you, Tom?" It successed. I was very worried about Tom's mental state. He discovered that his respected parents were stealing electricity and had moved us for their selfish scheme. It must have been a shock for him to find out the truth about his parents. I was shocked, but I feel more anger and disgust now. I want to get away from them as soon as possible. Let's move before any more harm comes to Yvonne. Us tired of my in-laws, Tom and I promptly took action. We billed my in-laws for the stolen electricity and soon moved to another apartment, choosing a place as far from my in-laws' house as possible. However, we carefully selected the location to not be too far from Tom's workplace. We settled on a property 3 train stations away from Tom's office. Of course, we did not tell my in-laws where we moved. My in-laws' already struggling restaurant lost even more customers after rumors spread that their son and daughter-in-law had fled. Additionally, unable to afford the electric bill and forced to cut back on ingredient costs, the quality of their food dropped, driving away even regular customers and eventually leading to the closure of their restaurant. Jobless, my in-laws started job hunting and managed to find work at a modest restaurant. However, they were disliked even in their new workplace for their condescending attitude and unwarranted interference. My father-in-law, once confident in his culinary skills, was devastated when a younger chef criticized his basic cooking skills. Moreover, when former regulars visited and commented that his cooking wasn't that great to begin with, he lost all his confidence. Since then, my father-in-law has become much quieter, losing his confidence, and his cooking skills further declined, and he was frequently scolded by other chefs. My mother-in-law, faced with reprimands for being slow by younger, more experienced female staff, felt alienated as she watched those around her work more efficiently, accumulating stress day by day. I actually witnessed my mother-in-law being scolded by a younger staff member when I happened to pass by my in-laws' new place of work.
You still have dishes left on the table. Please clear them quickly. We can't welcome the next customers like this.
My mother-in-law apologized to the young staff with a lifeless voice, and I was genuinely shocked. She seemed like a completely different person from the confident and vibrant woman she used to be, now gloomy and haggard. I also caught a glimpse of my father-in-law coming out of the kitchen, his eyes hollow and lacking vitality, making me feel pity for how quickly people can fall from grace. His and my in-laws' relationship deteriorated as they started taking their stress out on each other, often escalating to shouting matches. The reason I know so much about this situation is because my mother-in-law frequently left voicemails, unilaterally updating me on their circumstances. I never answered her calls, but she would always leave a message, ending with a similar plea every time. Hey, come back to the apartment. We won't steal electricity anymore. My mother-in-law frequently left voicemails, unilaterally updating me on their circumstances. I never answered her calls, but she would always leave a message, ending with a similar plea every time. So could you help us out? Please, don't abandon your old mother-in-law and father-in-law. I had no intention of helping them. Estes Bolt, I asked Tom if he had received any contact from them, but he had already blocked their numbers. I've blocked my parents' numbers a long time ago. I really don't want anything to do with them anymore. Yvonne, you should block them too. I am sorry my parents keep causing trouble.
No, Tom, you don't have to apologize.
Yes, I'll block them too. Thus, we no longer receive calls from my in-laws, and we continued to live our peaceful days together. After moving, our electric bill returned to its usual amount. A few months later, I happened to meet someone who lived near my in-laws and learned about their current situation. Our move had left the second floor of the in-laws' house in disrepair, and their constant fighting was so loud that neighbors had called the police on occasion. I learned that every day, the voices of the two fighting could be heard echoing from the in-laws' house. It was so loud that the police were called on occasion. When the noise suddenly stopped, it turned out my in-laws had moved away. Rumor has it, unable to afford the maintenance costs, my in-laws reluctantly sold their house and moved to a cheaper apartment with their limited savings, living in poverty. The last time our neighbors saw my in-laws, they looked terribly aged and worn out. Just hearing this, I couldn't muster any sympathy for my in-laws. Despite everything, Tom and I continued to live happily together. Our days were peaceful without the theft of electricity or sudden errands from my mother-in-law. My work from home became even more valued, and my salary increased. A few years later, Tom got promoted and was transferred to a major bank, and of course, I was going with him. Then, something wonderful happened. I found out I was pregnant. "Tom, I think I'm pregnant," I told Tom, showing him the positive pregnancy test. Tom cried tears of joy. "Yes, thank you, Ivan. They'll protect you and our baby no matter what." Despite the hardship caused by my in-laws, marrying Tom was truly the best decision. We have no plans to let the in-laws meet our child. Instead, Tom and I, along with my parents, decided to shower our child with love. Spring sickness soon followed, but Tom was there to support me every step of the way. He is going to be a great father. As my health stabilized and we found out the baby's gender, our excitement to meet the baby only grew. We plan to continue supporting each other and working together through the days ahead.